The wind didn't just blow through the cracked glass of the bus shelter. It bit a predatory cold that seemed to know Sarah had nothing left to defend herself with. At 24, Sarah sat huddled on a metal bench in the heart of Chicago, her entire life reduced to a fraying polyester blanket and a backpack that held more memories than possessions. The neon signs of the city blurred into streaks of hostile light as she pressed her forehead against the cold steel, wondering if the numbness in her fingers would eventually reach her heart and finally stop the aching. Just as she closed her eyes, praying for the invisibility that usually protected the broken, a small, gloved hand tugged at the edge of her tattered sleeve, and a voice like a silver bell broke through the roar of the city traffic, saying, "You need a home, and I need a mommy." If this story reminds you that even in the darkest corners of the world, a flicker of hope can change everything, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs a reminder of grace, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us share stories of kindness and second chances that the world needs to hear now more than ever. Sarah's eyes snapped open, expecting to see a social worker or perhaps a police officer telling her to move along. But instead, she looked down into the wide, chocolate-brown eyes of a girl no older than 6. The child was dressed in a bright pink puffer jacket that looked far too clean for the grime of the bus station, her cheeks flushed rosy from the biting January air. Sarah felt a sharp pang of shame, instinctively pulling her dirt-streaked coat tighter around her frame to hide the reality of her situation. But the little girl didn't flinch or pull away. She stood there with a terrifyingly pure kind of certainty, her small hand still anchored to Sarah's sleeve, as if she were afraid the young woman might vanish into the exhaust fumes of the passing Greyhound buses. For Sarah, who had spent the last 8 months being treated like a ghost or a nuisance, this sudden, intense recognition felt like a physical weight, forcing her to breathe through a chest that felt constricted by months of suppressed tears. Life hadn't always been a series of cardboard beds and soup kitchen lines for Sarah Jenkins. Only a year ago, she had been a junior graphic designer with a tiny apartment in the suburbs and a father who was her entire world. But when a sudden illness took her father and a mountain of medical debt swallowed her meager savings, the floor hadn't just fallen out, it had evaporated. The transition from a normal life to the streets was a violent, silent slide that left her stripped of her dignity before she even realized she was homeless. She had learned to walk with her head down, to find the corners of the city where the shadows were deepest, and to silence the voice in her head that whispered about the person she used to be. But this little girl, whose name Sarah would soon learn was Lily, was looking at her as if she were the most important person in the world, oblivious to the grime under Sarah's fingernails or the matted state of her blonde hair. Lily's mother, a woman named Elena, appeared a moment later, breathless and clutching a heavy suitcase, her face etched with a combination of exhaustion and a deep, haunting grief that Sarah recognized instantly. Elena didn't scold her daughter for talking to a stranger. Instead, she stopped dead in her tracks, her gaze moving from Lily's hopeful face to Sarah's hollowed features. There was a long, heavy silence where the sounds of the city seemed to fade away, leaving only the three of them in a bubble of shared vulnerability. Elena explained, in a voice that trembled only slightly, that they were waiting for a bus to a women's shelter 3 towns over, because their own home had been lost to a fire that took everything, including Lily's father. They were 2 broken units of family, drifting in the same storm, and in that moment, the hierarchy of helper and homeless vanished, replaced by the raw, human reality of loss. As the hours ticked by and the bus remained delayed by a brewing snowstorm, the 3 of them shared the cramped bench, huddling together for warmth. Sarah found herself opening her backpack to pull out a small wooden bird her father had carved for her, the only thing she hadn't sold for food. She handed it to Lily, watching as the girl's face lit up with joy that seemed to defy the surroundings. Sarah began to tell Lily stories, her voice growing stronger as she described imaginary worlds where the wind was made of silk and no one ever felt cold. For the first time in months, Sarah wasn't thinking about where her next meal would come from or how to stay safe in the park. She was focused on the light in a child's eyes. She realized that while she had lost her house, she hadn't lost her capacity to nurture, and in giving a piece of her heart to this child, she felt a spark of her own humanity returning. The struggle didn't end that night at the bus station, but the trajectory of Sarah's life shifted on its axis because Elena saw something in Sarah that Sarah had long since forgotten: a future. When the bus finally arrived, Elena didn't just say goodbye. She gave Sarah a crumpled piece of paper with a phone number for a community center that helped women find transitional housing and job placement. She told Sarah that she had a spirit that children could trust, and that was a gift the world desperately needed. Sarah watched the bus pull away, Lily's small hand waving against the window, until it disappeared into the snow. And for the first time, Sarah didn't feel like a ghost. She felt like a woman with mission, carrying the weight of a child's plea in her heart as she walked toward the community center the very next morning, her footsteps heavy with purpose rather than defeat. The months that followed were a grueling climb out of the abyss, filled with setbacks, long shifts at a local diner, and the exhausting process of reclaiming her identification and her place in society. There were nights when Sarah wanted to give up, when the memory of the cold metal bench felt more familiar than the hope of a warm bed. But she would look at the small drawing Lily had scribbled for her on the back of a bus schedule that night, a picture of 2 tall houses and 3 stick figures. Sarah eventually moved into a tiny, sun-drenched studio apartment, and through the community center, she began volunteering as a mentor for children who had experienced trauma. She used her skills as a designer to create art programs for homeless youth, turning her pain into a bridge for others to cross. She never forgot the little girl who saw a mommy where everyone else saw a vagrant, and she spent every day trying to become the person that child believed she was. 2 years later, Sarah stood in the lobby of a newly opened community garden she had helped fund, her life unrecognizable from the one she had lived in the shadows of the bus station. A woman entered the garden, holding the hand of a taller, older Lily, and the air seemed to hum with the electricity of a promise kept. Elena looked at Sarah, now vibrant, healthy, and standing tall, and the 2 women embraced without a word, the shared trauma of their past serving as a foundation for a profound, chosen family. Lily ran to Sarah, hugging her waist just as she had tugged her sleeve years prior, and Sarah realized that the home Lily had spoken of wasn't a building or a roof. It was the safety they found in one another's presence. Sarah had finally found her way back to the world, led by the hand of a child who knew that no one is ever truly lost as long as someone is willing to look them in the eye and see their soul. Please leave a comment below with the word hope if you believe that a single act of recognition can save a life. The legacy of that night at the bus station grew into something far larger than Sarah could have ever imagined, as she eventually founded a nonprofit dedicated to providing dignified housing and mentorship for young women. She often sits on the board of city committees, advocating for those who are still trapped in the silence she once knew so well, always carrying that small wooden bird in her pocket as a talisman. Whenever she feels the pressure of the world closing in, she remembers the feeling of Lily's small hand and the power of those simple, devastatingly honest words. Sarah Jenkins is no longer a woman without a home. She is a woman who built a home out of the wreckage of her life, proving that the most beautiful things are often those that have been broken and mended with love. If this story touched your heart and reminded you of the power of human connection, please subscribe and join our community. Every like and comment helps us reach more people with messages of compassion. Thank you for being part of this journey with us. Would you like me to write another story about an unexpected act of kindness, or perhaps a different theme entirely?